Welcome to the Veteran Show. I'm one of the hosts, Levi Miller.
And I'm the other host, Tom Lucan. Unfortunately, our guest didn't make it tonight. We're not sure why, so we're going to change the tables a little bit tonight.
Okay.
And me and Levi are going to go through and discuss our families, the ones who served, and just try to give them a little recognition. Me and Levi always give recognition because we're always talking. Ain't that right, Levi?
I'm talking about all the time. All the time.
So, but Levi, I tell you what, since you're the main man on the show, my friend, I'll let you start first and, just go through some of your different family members here, sir.
Okay, well, we didn't have many, but I had my father. He was in World War II. He was in artillery, and he was stationed at New Guinea, and then he went to Japan, after the bomb was dropped and everything. But
wow, he was in the Pacific, huh?
Yeah, he was in the Pacific. And Thomas, he was telling me when they went overseas, they went by back then. Went by ship. It may take 30 days. And when he got out of service, he never wanted to get on a ship. We tried to take him on a couple of cruises. He said he had enough of the ship because they were sleeping on deck. So you know how cooler can get out there and everything. And he had a funny story one time, Thomas, when he was in New Guinea. He's kind of a sound sleeper. He said while he was in New Guinea, a gorilla dragged him out of his tent, and he didn't know it till he woke up. And he was laying on the outside. But a gorilla went through the tent and dragged him out.
Yeah.
But he was when he was living, he was diehard military. He came out the rank at E5 then, but he loved his military.
Oh, your father?
Yes, I know.
I bet you he did tell you. I bet you he had some good stories for World War II, especially serving on the Pacific side.
Oh yeah, he did. I think he did about 5 or 6 years because when he got ready to go, the war started, and they wouldn't let nobody out.
Yeah, well, one thing to throw out there, and because some listeners have probably not realized it because it's been so many years now. Right. Back then, your dad was probably in an all-black unit. That's when the Army was still the military was still segregated.
Yeah, I was just going to say that too. Yeah, he was in an all-black unit.
So, and it's not that many years ago that happened. And sometimes people lose track of history. I've always been a history fanatic.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah. And it's funny, though, you said artillery. My mom's father served in World War II.
Oh, did he?
And,
all right.
He was artillery. He was
okay.
an observer.
Oh, okay. So they both was in artillery then.
Yeah, both were artillery, yeah. Now, my mom's father, it's actually her stepfather, but there's a big age difference there. He was probably close, oh my gosh, I'm trying to think now. He was only 11 years older than my dad was. That's why we're both World War II.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah. Now, you had a nephew who served in the Air Force, correct?
Yeah, my nephew, Ronald Anderson. He retired in the Air Force. He was there 25 years. He came out as a master sergeant. And, he did a lot of stuff overseas, Air Force base, in Italy and everywhere else. And I know when he first got in.
Well, you know what you need to do? You need to get him on the show one time.
Yes, okay. I'm gonna have to. I'm probably at the end of April. Soon as our schedule run out. I was thinking I'd bring him in. But and then also when he left the Air Force, Thomas, he went back as a contractor in Iraq. I think he did like 2 years.
Oh, okay. I don't blame him. I did that when I got out of the Army in '91 and went back overseas as a contractor.
Right. He did like 2 years. And I know when he first went to the Air Force, he was fueling the jet planes, the fighters and the bombers. That was his first when he went in. Then after that, he advanced, and then he started, teaching in the Air Force, But that, that's what he did. And it was only three of us that went to a service. My father, my nephew, and myself. All of us came out with the rank of at least a sergeant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Well, see, my family, I couldn't honestly answer that. Oh, my God. We've had several that served. Just going off my dad's side, my great-grandfather, John Henry was his name, too.
Okay.
I say that because my son John's named after him.
John Henry, all right.
But J. Henry, as he went by, what's funny, Grandpa went by Henry, J. Henry. And the reason is, my great-grandfather, he was the first Lucan to migrate here from Germany.
Okay.
His name was Gerhard. Well, my grandfather was the eldest child, and he was the first of three Johns in that family.
All right.
So my grandfather, he went by J. Henry. They're trying to, make it easier for people to know who he is. He went by his middle name because there's three Johns in the family. Right. So I don't think he wanted to be associated with Jack, who was nicknamed Jack. One of the other Johns was killed in Sioux City. In a saloon of all places in Sioux City, Iowa, back about 1929. I never asked Dad before he passed away why, but no, my grandfather served, and he's the eldest child, but he's the first Lucan in our family to serve in the military, and he served in World War I. And he was mounted cavalry, I think.
Oh, okay.
It was mounted cavalry, and but past that, I don't know much history on it. I know Grandpa took pride in the service. He was active in the Legion up till a few years before he passed in 1984.
Right.
So, but now after Grandpa, my grandfather had 4 sons. And 1 daughter. Actually, it was the daughter first, then the 4 sons. And Nuke, I can't remember on her husband, Ken, if he did or not. My mother might know.
Okay.
But starting my dad's brother's Uncle Bud, as he went by, Bud was his nickname. And Uncle Bud, he was the eldest boy. He was in the Pacific for 3 years with the Navy.
All right.
And he was on cargo ships. I got pictures I found on the internet, both of the cargo ships, and I passed on to my cousin, Faye. And but he was the first of the 4 boys to serve, and he served in the Pacific from 41 to 42 up till late 44.
Okay.
Then when he got out, Dad was drafted in, and I always remember my dad telling me. My dad hated farming. I come from a farming family. My dad didn't like the farm.
That sounds like my father, right?
Yeah, well, Dad didn't want to. He wanted to go in the service to get away from the damn farm, but Grandpa wouldn't let him at the time. And of course, back then, it didn't matter your age. You still had to respect what your elders wanted.
Oh yeah, it was a lot different from the days now.
Oh yeah, exactly. And so. But Dad was drafted in, he went in 44, and Dad ended up in a tank unit. He was a tanker. Well, I remember Dad telling me some of his stories, and these were all at, let me take a step. It was at Hood. But back then, it wasn't Fort, it was Camp Hood.
Camp Hood?
Went to Camp Liz,
okay.
Then went to Camp Hood.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But, I remember my dad was in just under 2 years, but I remember some of the stories. He didn't talk about anything else, but he talked about Fort Hood, but he got picked up as a company clerk, Levi.
Oh, okay.
And the main reason was he was the only one of the few people who knew how to read and write back then.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah, so they made a clerk at it.
Yeah, so my dad, whether he wanted to or not, he ended up being the company clerk because he could read and write.
Okay.
So back then, again, a lot of the rural boys didn't know how to do either.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And so, my dad did, but that's because my grandfather believed in push on education. My grandfather had 2 years of college.
Right.
Back in back around World War I.
Right.
But, got more college than I do. But yeah, my dad. I remember a couple of stories. Like, my dad was telling me, what was it? Oh yeah, he got picked. What was it? Or something else. I just had a brain fart. But I know my other one. He told me when he did have to pull guard duty, they were guarding German prisoners there at Camp Hood.
Okay.
And Dad said they see the jackrabbits, and of course they got loaded M1. They had M1 carbines, not the Grants, but the carbines.
Right.
And Dad said when they're guarding the prisoners, well, he said it wasn't uncommon because they had jackrabbits around there. He said, and Dad said it wasn't uncommon for us to open up on the jackrabbits. And he said, man, when we did that to German prisoners, about had a heart attack. They didn't know what was going on.
Hey, I can imagine that. Right.
And but what people have forgotten that a lot of times, especially like in Germany, there was no place for POW camps. Outside of England, so a lot of the German prisoners were brought back to the States during World War II.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, well, Camp Hood was one of the places they had them. I know there was numerous others, but I know Camp Hood then, Fort Hood now, was one of the places they kept it.
Right.
And Dad ended up being in the service from like 44 to 46.
Okay.
So, and Dad's the second oldest of the Lucan boys there.
Okay.
Third is Frank.
Oh, you had a lot of right.
Yeah, well, there's Frank and there's Skip. And so Dad, by the way, is the only one out of the four to go Army. Everybody else was Navy.
Right. In that Navy unit. Okay.
Well, then there's Frank and Skip. I'll go to Skip first. He's the youngest of the two. Mm-hmm. But him, they both went ROTC with the Navy, or whatever the heck the Navy calls it, but ROTC in college.
Right.
And so, but Skip, he did his 6 years and got out. He was in between Korea and Vietnam, so he did his 6 years, got out, and went on to become an airline pilot.
Oh, okay.
And he flew the airlines till Skip was 81 now. He retired about 20 years ago from flying the airlines.
Wow.
So he met my aunt there, but yeah. And what's funny, he's retired from the airlines, so what does he do for retirement?
What did he do? Oh yeah. He traveled. And Thomas, you were talking about that. One more thing about my father. Cause I know now when you go in the Army, you have to have a high school education, right? To join the Army, but
back then, when my dad, went in back then, they just needed bodies.
Oh yeah, cause my father did.
As long as they could shoot, that's all that matters. Like my dad said.
Right,
he said, your best soldiers were the country boys, the rural boys.
Right, cause my father, he didn't go no further. He didn't go no further. I think into maybe the in elementary school, 6th grade. It was 6th grade. He never did go to high school. He worked on a farm all his life, or they were farmers, picking cotton and all that. And then he went to the military. And after that, I forgot, 2 of his brothers went. One of his brothers went, which is Uncle Lawrence. He went to Korea. He was in World War II in Korea.
Really?
Yeah. He was in that, in the 50s. He was during that wartime.
Yeah.
And he talked about it a lot. And he's still living right now, too. I haven't talked to him lately, but he's still living. And he used to have a lot of war stories, about how cold it were and all that. And
well, he knows you were in Korea back a few years after he was, right?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, we talk about that. I almost had forgot about Uncle Lawrence that he went to Korea when he was in the Army, in the Korean War.
Who was he assigned to? What division, do you know?
No, I never did ask him what division he was in. Right now, he got dementia right now, so a lot of things he kind of forget, because I was going to talk to him some more about it. Because he's right now, he got to be, right now, he's probably about 87 or 88 years old.
Yeah, that'd be about right for the Korean era, Korean War era, the age.
Right, because my father, he passed, he was like 94 when he passed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, you said you had another uncle that was in too, didn't you?
Yeah, I had another uncle. That was, we call him Uncle DC. and he stayed mostly stateside. He didn't go overseas. But back then, for some reason, he stayed stateside.
Well, that happened. I've known a few guys who were like that during even World War II.
Yeah. They got lucky. They're the one that got lucky.
Yeah. It's kind of like if you watch the movie Patton with George C. Scott.
Yeah, I used to love that movie.
He tells the guys there, he goes, at the beginning of the movie, he's making that speech, giving the speech or whatever. He goes, hey, you can tell your grandkids when you get older that, what you did in the war and that you weren't shoveling shit in Louisiana. Or something like that.
Since you talk about Patton, my captain, when I first went to Korea, he was he was a Green Beret, and he walked around with a cane just like Patton did, and he was hell, Thomas. His name was Captain Seating. I never forget that. But he was hardcore.
I imagine he was.
Yeah, he was hardcore, man. He was giving out Article 15 left and right. For the soldier, that wouldn't do what they're supposed to do. But he was hard, and I was glad. Everybody was glad when he left, though.
Well, you talk about Article 15, and see back then, your time, you could get them an Article 15, but it really didn't hurt the soldier like it would, a dozen years later.
Right.
It got to the point in the 80s, you had an Article 15. Well, they have what they call the restricted fish that can protect you. So let's say you got a summary grade, company grade, field grade Article 15. Summary does not carry the max punishment 7 and 7. 7 days restrict, 7 days execute. The summary, once you leave the unit, the summary goes away. It goes in the garbage.
Okay.
Company grade, field grade go into your record, but I know this from experience on company grades, by the way. But and mine was put in my restricted fish file, as they call it. That way it didn't hurt your career.
Wow.
Now, after I got out, and of course this was during the drawdown with Clinton, after the Cold War and after Desert Storm, they terminated the fish file, the restriction anymore. Well, you know why? They're looking for reasons to downsize the Army.
Right.
And so now these guys who are going for E7 or E8 with the restricted fish is not in play anymore. If they got a company grade field grade sitting in there, boom, they just got killed for promotion.
Yeah, I heard something about that. Right.
Out for the better of the Army or whatever the hell they call it.
Right. Because usually when I was in that time, you got an Article 15, they reduced them like one rank. There was a TFC to go to private. That was about it.
One rank. Field grade was 2 ranks.
Right.
Anything above that goes to court martial.
Yeah, okay. Cause I do in our outfit, most of everything was just straight Article 15 where they, get their rank reduced, and that was about it. But Captain Seaton, he was just hardcore. You know what I mean? And
Well, Green Beret to start with, but actually, in some ways, as a Green Beret, you think you'd be laid back because they are a different type of attitude.
Oh yeah. They always have.
But yet, I'm sure he did it because people weren't doing their jobs, not for worry about your uniform ain't straight or some bull BS like that.
Right.
I was gonna say, I was gonna say in the Navy. I bet you my uncle did it. They don't call it Article 15 in the Navy. It's Article 15, but they call it Captain's Mast.
Oh, Captain. Okay.
So the ship captain, which it could be any rank depending on what type of ship.
Right.
I was gonna say my last uncle I didn't talk about. He's the second youngest boy. That was Frank. He did 27 years in the Navy. He was a naval aviator.
27 years in the Navy, huh?
Yeah, he went in 55. He missed the Korean War.
Okay.
2 years. 55, I think. Yeah, 55. around the age of Mom, whatever, but it was 55, and 55, 56, but he ended up doing 27 years in, and he retired in 1982. He did numerous missions to Vietnam. Numerous.
Wow.
He flew the old, what the heck they call them? They're E3s. It's electronic intelligence aircraft, and he flew those doing recon missions over near and over North Vietnam.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah, and the E3 was a prop job. It wasn't anything fast.
Wow. So
the E3 was like a P3 that some people are more familiar with.
Uh-huh.
And but it was all electronics in there. But that was his mission. But he ended up retiring in 1982, right after I went in the Army. But that was him. I know I got one. I think both my cousins did. I'm not 100% sure. I know my one cousin, Faye. She's Bud's daughter, my dad's oldest brother.
Right.
But my cousin Faye, she was an Army nurse from 74 to 77.
Okay. Hey, and when you said that, Thomas, when I went there, the ladies, it was the wax then.
Yeah, I think it changed by the time she went out.
Yeah, they call that wax stand for Women Army Corps. And
yeah, because they were actually separate from the Army.
Yes, they were. They were. I remember the brown dresses they had, and all of that. But like you said, it was the wax. That's what it was called.
By the time she went in, I think it changed.
Okay.
Between 70 and 74, after Vietnam, after 73. But she was 74 to 77. Her husband was an Army doctor, anesthesiologist, Charlie.
Okay.
And that's how she met him. Charlie, I can't remember, but his service dates, Charlie died young. Of all things, being a doctor on medical, Charlie died at the age of about 52 of a heart attack.
Right.
And he died right about the time Dad did, so 15 years ago. Charlie was close to you in age. He would have been 67.
Okay.
But she ended up, after their service time, or his, I think, she ended up at Fort Hood, and to this day, she still is a civilian nurse at the hospital at Fort Hood.
Oh, is she? Okay. Down at Fort Hood, down in Texas.
Oh, yeah. She stayed with the Army hospital. 40 years she's been a nurse with the Army, for the Army, in a military and civilian capacity.
Uh-huh.
And yes, in fact, she lives in Killeen, Texas.
Wow.
And so, but yeah, Faye, she's an Army nurse. And so that was my cousin. So we talked about, we'll jump over me. None of my other cousins, I'm not sure. I think her sister Wendy served. And see, I think they both went ROTC at the time.
Okay.
Or whatever it was for them, because, back to your guys' day, you didn't have, it was, even my day, when I got out of graduate high school, we didn't have the opportunity to take out all these easy grants and scholarships and student loans.
You definitely right. We didn't have that.
So, my parents, if I wanted to go to school, would will help, but there was no such thing as student loans. My mom and dad would have to pay for it, or I just didn't go to school.
That's right.
In my case, I went a semester and said, the heck with school, because I don't like being desk bound, so I ended up going in the Army. But the last one, the Lucan family of the clan that served, was my son John.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And he did a mixture of active duty and National Guard time. And so, but John went in the Army, let me think. Believe it or not, he's been out 3 years already. He spent 6 years in total. And let me take a step back on my son John to get people familiar. John, for the listeners, my son John is also a military brat, but he's also a brother.
All right.
He's a brother because he's a vet like the rest of us.
Right.
John was born in 1989 in Korea, 121 Hospital. That's where his life started.
Okay.
And, and life went on for a 11 years of him living around the military for his first 11 years. 10 and a half of those years was in Korea.
Wow.
6 months at Fort Irwin.
So he grew up there. Okay.
Oh, yeah. He pretty much grew up in Korea. Then Vandalia, Illinois after that, where he still lives. And, but John, that's where his first 11 years were. So my son, he grew up riding a bike down in post or in the camp, like at Camp Casey. It ain't uncommon to ride your bike and go flying past a M1 tank going down the road or whatever.
Right.
My son was used to seeing all the military stuff all his life. Helicopters flying over, constantly in and off post.
That's right.
When he was, parents would have a heart attack if they knew of my kid or what we did at his age. 9 years old, we used to take off a bike and go all over town.
Yeah, yes, we did.
Yeah.
I remember all that.
My son did. He'd take all his buddies, and he'd go on post, let's say, to go to the swimming pool or whatever.
Oh, yeah?
And of course, he speak of Crayon, but Crayon, he didn't have an ID because he wasn't old enough, but the guards knew who he was, and he spoke fluent Korean, so, it was no problem getting on post. But they would take off and go on post and play around on post.
Oh, you got to be kidding.
Yeah, my son, and of course, I've taken him around with a lot of the equipment, my kids. They grew up around the military equipment, but in 2000, when we moved, I came back from overseas. We ended up settling eventually in Vandalia, Illinois, where he lives now.
Right.
But John did his school years there. Then 18, so 2007, December 2007, he went into the Army, and he started with the National Guard.
Okay.
And he spent more time active duty than he was playing National Guard. He was a National Guardsman the whole time, but he ended up doing he went in National Guard, and that was in December. He started doing drills. Then June, my son, as intelligent as he was lazy, Levi. He had to get his GED because he lagged in school there because he was lazy.
That sound like me. Okay.
Yeah, well, John's a good kid, but he has his moments and still does. But John, he went on, when he went in, what happened, the National Guard offered to pay for his GED. So he went down to come on. What's that? I just want to bring that down to Arkansas, Fort Chaffee.
Okay.
For a month. And he spent a month down there learning what he already knew, but he passed his GED with flying colors. He had one of the highest scores, I guess. I'm thinking, yeah, you applied yourself at school. And but he got his GED, then he came back, was home for a couple of weeks, and he took off and went to Fort Benning, and he made that mistake. I'm sorry, Levi, I say mistake. He decided to go 11 Bravo.
Boy, yeah, he was a great soldier. If you went to 11 Bravo, I got to talk to John one day. He had to be great, Tom. He was 11 Bravo, 11B10. Right.
Yeah, well, I had to let you talk, but yeah, he had to spend quite a bit of, spending time in Afghanistan. And so I got some pictures from him, not too many. John is not photogenic like his daughter is, my granddaughter.
Okay.
The other son, the youngest son, he's pretty photogenic. He's good about it. But John's like his mother. He don't take my picture, or hide his face or whatever. He's gotten better about it. So he knows I'm going to take pictures of my granddaughter if you say he's in the shot. You don't get a choice.
Well, when I first seen the picture of John, he looked like a great man then. So that's why he was great. He was 11 Bravo. Now I understand. Right.
Yeah, well, he ended up doing 6 years. December 2013, he got out, and after 6 years in, and so, but he did a 6-year commitment. But he did a lot of. He went to a lot of places, did a lot of training, and so on. But,
did he serve in Iraq?
No, he never went to Iraq.
Okay.
It was only Afghanistan.
Okay, how was Afghanistan? 'Cause I haven't talked really to any soldier really that was in Afghanistan.
Well, that's why I wanted to get. I was hoping Chris be on tonight, and I'll have to talk to my son about getting him on the show.
Yeah.
And John's liable to do it. John's kind of a private person. He's not the most open, but seemed like lately, and I think it has something to do with his medications, but it seemed like lately he's been more open to talk. And,
okay.
Like with family, oh my God, he's worse than me. You can't get him to shut up. Yeah. And Jeffrey's the talker. Jeffrey's as bad as me, the youngest son. They're tight, my two youngest boys, and Jeffrey and John. And but I know Jeffrey is like, Dad. He goes, I thought I was the talker of the two. He goes, John makes me quiet. I said, that's hard to do.
Right.
But yeah, you get around family, oh my God, it's like, shut the heck up, John. And he's a good kid. He battles PTSD pretty hard.
Oh, do he? All right.
Oh, yeah, he's 100% of the PTSD.
Did he have a hard time, getting proved? Because you know how the military is. It usually took them a while.
Hard time getting what?
Did he have a hard time? So he 100%. Did he have a hard time getting that 100% rated?
No, he didn't.
Okay.
I think he had enough supporting evidence. When he submitted a claim, and the first time it wasn't PTSD. They gave him something else.
Okay.
And just basic behavioral issues, and it's like they gave him 40%, but it's like what? So he reapplied, and this happened a little over a year and a half ago. He reapplied. Well, as his claim was in the process of being done, we had some issues, especially when my granddaughter first came around. The stress of the initial stress of it really tore in on him. And I know, oh my God, within a week after she was born, I get a call from my daughter-in-law. Frightful. And of course, she was worried about this when we moved to Troy. She goes, what happens if I have a problem with John? I said, you call me. I said, I'll be there. I'll be there. I said, I don't give a heck damn where I'm at. I'll be there.
You'll be there.
I'm only 40 minutes away.
Okay.
And I could make it in 30 if I have to, and I've done it in 35.
Right.
And but John had some issues, and the VA he was going through in Marion, Illinois.
Okay.
But the one time when it got so bad, I've already made the determination, and thankfully he made it himself to admit himself. If he didn't do it, I was going to admit him because it's just getting harder on all of us. And, my other son, he had to hit him. He had to turn around. If he's got back one night, Jeffrey turned around and slugged him.
Oh, wow.
Jeffrey thought it was going to be on.
Okay.
And I think once he hit John, they kind of brought him back into the senses, and, things settled down after. But, Jeffrey cleared the room. I was downstairs, Jeffrey was upstairs, and John was just out of his mind, and Jeffrey just turned around and just hit him.
Okay.
And boy, that took my son hard. After he came down, he started crying, said, Dad, I had to hit John.
Right.
And it really shook him up, And, it's a family thing we've always endured. And, I know one of the incidents my wife went, and she didn't go the last time it happened, the final time, which has been a year now, thank God, or almost a year. And, it was amazing, but it's been a stressful time, and he's had his moments. I mean, the baby, right before the baby came, they laid him off from work for health reasons, and he was on unemployment. It was just a mess for him. And the stress really took on him with the PTSD, but
right.
He self-admitted himself, so what happened that night, and I know several of the local police there, a lot of them are veterans, and, we got John to go up to the hospital. They had to take an ambulance ride to St. Louis.
Okay.
But Jefferson Barracks, from what I understand and from what I've seen of my son, is Jefferson Barracks VA hospital does a good job working with veterans on PTSD. And so they changed some of his meds. They work with him. He goes down there for all his appointments now. So he's done pretty good, knock on wood. So,
okay.
But there's been some stressful moments dealing with him on it. And see, now they the thing is with the PTSD, Levi, they treat kids now. You and I, when we got out, there was no such thing as PTSD.
No, I was telling my wife that.
Looking at treatments.
That's right. I was telling my wife. We didn't know nothing about no PTSD.
Well, it's like I told the psychiatrist before I talked to him. I told the one I see occasionally. Mm-hmm. And as I told her, I said, when I got out, I said, my day when we got out, there's no such thing as PTSD.
No.
I said, unless you flew over the cuckoo's nest, as the old Blue Jack Nicholson movie's called. One flew over the cuckoo's nest.
Yeah, I like that movie too.
It went nuts.
Right.
You dealt with it. It was self-healing.
Right.
You learn to deal with them one way or another. Sadly, I know many guys that kill themselves by drinking.
Oh yeah,
because they drank themselves to death.
Yes, I know plenty of them that was like that. You know what I mean? And even when they was in service, they a lot of them became alcoholics too. From all the stress and everything. And that's why I do that. Huh?
It's taken 220 some odd years for the government to finally realize, man, these people come back to screwed up heads, and it's kind of our fault. Yeah, no shit.
Right. Because just think about it, Thomas. You over there, either Vietnam or Korea, and then the next day, you ETS, you out on the street, and your mind don't adjust that fast.
Oh well, yeah. Well, just in Korea, and slowly more and more guys are getting recognized for who are up in the DMZ or served in Korea for PTSD.
Right.
And it's. What people don't realize, the stress of the nature, you're in a combat zone up there.
Right.
When you're out there on the line, whether you're sitting in the foxhole, sitting in the bunker, sitting in guard posts, running patrols, you're running real patrols.
And it's very scary, too. I'm talking about it's very scary.
Oh, yeah. It's not a game when you got you're carrying what they call your UBL.
Right.
Unit basic load. You got all your M16, you got your weapon, you got your rounds. You're carrying the basic load as prescribed by the manual for combat.
Right. And
you ain't out there playing with, the training devices. You're out there on the real McCoy.
Right.
And, in Korea, we had to deal with the damn propaganda all the time.
Yes, right.
And, lovely thing to hear 2 in the morning when old Kim up there is deciding they're going to talk to you.
Oh, yeah. And, Thomas, they used to tell Katusa, if they in a bunker with a GI, just jump up and shoot him. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
A lot of that was going on. So that make you think. When your time to go to sleep on God, dude, should I go to sleep? You see what I'm saying? And but it wore on your mind though.
Oh, it did. Well, just the tension of it. The dangers of it. People don't realize that, again, the DMZ, the Korean DMZ, is and has been and still is one of the most heavily mined areas in the world.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I can contest to that.
Oh, yeah, you had told me that story about that, right?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of stories, but it's fine in my mind that we shouldn't have found. It was just a bad luck.
Right.
But venture into a minefield. Oh joy, what fun!
Right.
And that's the kind of good stuff. That really screws with your mind again.
Oh yeah.
Walk a 12-man patrol into the damn minefield. And
right.
You wonder why I don't have. You wonder why I'm kind of nutty.
Well, that's all of us. You don't believe me? Ask my wife. She swear on that. So But Thomas, how did you patrol? How did you cope with being on patrol in the Z?
Yeah. Well, people. I think the hardest thing with people dealing with, and what's hard for veterans.
Right.
Once you've done time in the service. And you and I are getting older and actually older now. But it's easy to talk to another veteran, and we don't have to explain ourselves.
Right.
Okay, where'd you serve? I served Vietnam. I served Afghanistan. I served Iraq. I don't have to serve in Korea in the DMZ or the Korean War or World War II, etc. We don't have to explain ourselves. We might talk a little bit about our experiences, just
right.
the BS.
Right.
But have to explain, like you and me talking, Levi, I don't have to explain to you what it was like just to be in the Army in general, let alone to serve in Korea.
Yeah, that's right.
You know.
Right.
You know better because you were there before me.
Right.
But no, you know. We both know. And so we talk about how things were different when we talk about the differences and the changes. But past that, the mission's still the same.
Yeah,
whether you were there in 1954 or 1968 or 1988, you know, the mission was always the same.
Right.
You know, our job was, to deter the North Koreans, you know, and that was our job, to deter them.
Right.
Guard the border, look for infiltrators, kill if need be.
And Thomas, that's what kind of made me mad sometimes with the Army, because a lot of soldiers that were down south, you know, they came up on patrols sometime too, you know, on GPs and on a barrier fence, and they is not getting the credit, you know, that they've been up on the Z. You know what I mean? And you know, that kind of hurt a little bit. You know, I was one that lucky, you know, within the unit, first of the 38, you know, that they had us, you know, on the G and everything. But we had other soldiers, I know, that came from down south in some time, because we were very short during that time too. You know, we were very short personnel, and you know, they came up, and then they don't get credit. It's not on their DD-214 that they was up on the Z, and you know, that's rough.
Huh? Like with 2ID, you had the Engine Scout Award.
Right.
7th ID till they deactivated in Korea in 1971. They had a similar award. It was a Bandette Award or something. You know, 7th ID.
Right.
Cross Bandette. I don't know. I would have to look it up. But you know, they had. But that was an internal local award.
Right.
You didn't go in your DD-214, and once you left Korea, all you had was a certificate and a patch that was given that you could wear. You used to be able to wear a uniform in Korea to show your Engine Scout. And the Engine Scout patch was there for a reason, is so you could be identified as somebody who served on the DMC.
Right. But you know, a lot of soldiers facing this Agent Orange claim, you know, it's like they never did come up north, and you know, and Tom, how can Agent Orange go away?
That's another one we could spend easily an hour on.
Right. So how can they say, you know, for the soldiers that came after 71, that you know they didn't get Agent Orange, because that stuff was still in the soil, and and it's probably still in the soil now. I know it is, and in the water too. And you know, they ate with it, you know, with the water, took shower with, washed clothes in the water. You know, and we cooked noodles in the water. You know what I mean? So, but a lot of times they're not getting the credit. You know, I was just wanting to look at one with a unit, you know, that they recognize that up on the Z.
Yeah, and where they get their list of units, the problem is what they don't understand is how many times, and I've done it in my years in the Army, how many times do you unofficially get attached to a unit anywhere?
That's true.
And that's not shown anywhere in your records. Even if you're attached, most of the time it don't show.
Right.
You know, you're assigned to this unit. There's nothing showing that, okay, the guy was attached, because I know several guys are that way. Back during the current dates of 68 to 71, I know a few guys who spent time in the DMZ, but they were attached out, but they get denied on their claims because, your unit wasn't there. Well, he was attached. And the VA just, you know, whoever the idiotic raiders are at the VA, and I will say idiotic.
There you go. I agree.
I will say it, and you know, and I've had this battle with one last year. You know, they don't give a damn what the GI says. They consider every one of us a liar.
Right.
If you don't have some way to prove it, like they'll say, you know, people say, well, you need a buddy letter.
Right.
So you're saying you don't take my word. You say I'm a liar. You know, of course, apparently regulations are blowing off by the VA raiders. You know, but you know, dictating things. You know, like my case, I got my battles because, and I guess it's part of my fault because I made a mistake of trusting the damn military and the government, the Army and the VA with my records.
Right.
And now my records are missing, and I didn't make a copy. And that's part of my fault for making a mistake of trusting somebody I'm supposed to be able to trust.
Right. And
or an organization.
I had some missing one too, but you know, during that time, man, you didn't think about, you know, keeping up with your record because you think, that the Army, they're going to keep up with it. You know what I mean? So that even crossed our mind. Hey, keep up with my record that I went to the, I had to go to the hospital or whatever. That didn't even cross your mind because you thought the armed forces, they'll take care of that for you.
Well, it's like that, but, most of us, years back, and I'm sure it's this way today with the younger vets. You do your time. When you're ready to get out, you just want to get out. And
right.
I know I did. In my case, when I got out in 91 after Desert Storm, I had a job lined up as a contractor to go back overseas.
Okay.
So my concern was getting cleared out of the Army, getting everything settled, and moving back overseas.
Mm-hmm.
Easier said than done. And with 2 kids, and that was another mess. But, I was playing single parent at the time. And so I'm going through trying to get everything, And so, in fact, my DD-214 still ain't right. I've done one correction on it so far. I got a DD-250. But when I got out, I know when I was clearing, I was sitting there when I reviewed my DD-214, and I told them on the spot I was missing stuff.
Okay.
And what happened, they were getting ready to go on the long break for 4th of July.
Right.
And the guy said, this was the July 3rd, the last final. I was on my last leg of clearing. All I needed was my DD-214. Everything else was done. And the guy told me, I think it was a guy, but they told me, if you want this corrected, you ain't gonna, you'll have to come back, you're going to be here another 4 or 5 days past your ETS date.
Right.
I'm getting let out there. So I just looked at it and said, screw it. As long as it said honorable discharge, I didn't care. Give it to me, and I was gone.
Right.
And that's all, I worried about. And at the time, when you get out of the service, you don't reflect back how much, how important it was till years later to it.
Right, that's true.
When we got out, you didn't look back and realize what you did. It's like, I guess anymore it's different now, especially after Desert Storm.
Right.
And veterans are, I guess you say we're on a little bit of a pedestal now, where 30, 40 years ago we weren't.
Right, that's right.
And so, but, you go back, we don't realize till years later how much it affected us. And there's a difference between us and the younger generation that too.
That's true.
I had a young guy look at me, he goes, we were talking about disability in the VA, Levi. He goes,
okay.
Well, why didn't you apply for disability when you get out? I said, son, in my days, when we get out, you had all 10 fingers, all 10 toes, you could walk and talk.
That's right.
See out of both eyes. You didn't care. You just got out and went.
Right. You didn't think nothing about that. Right. That's true.
Yeah. Well, nowadays, you got a lot of younger veterans and who probably deserve it. I know we got older veterans that don't deserve it. I'm sure you got younger veterans.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
You got the veterans more oriented to apply, and I think they're taught to apply towards VA and told when they get out. In our case, hey, you got out, you got out. You went on.
Yeah, that's right. That's what you did. You just got out. You didn't worry about it.
And that's what you find most vets our generations in that, Levi. They just got out and moved on.
Right. But I'm so glad I'm glad the soldiers now realize that they're keeping up with they're keeping up with everything.
Well, everything's digitalized. Nowadays, is all. See, the only thing they digitalized or computerized. They started computerizing the finance records in '84.
Right.
That was the only thing. Everything else was paperwork.
Yeah, it were, and they lost some of my records. Thomas, they lost. I had got spinal while I was in basic. That don't even show up on my record. And then when I went to NOM for that, like that TDY I told you about, that don't even show up on my record either.
Yeah, well, that's the same here. Mine don't show. And,
right.
So there's I got a copy of my 201 file. I did request that.
Okay.
And I got that. And so now the VA I've been in battle. For some reason, when I got out, because I got a notice somewhere from the VA stating that my medical and dental were not sent to the record center in St. Louis here. They were sent directly to the VA in St. Louis. Well, they got them and lost them because they had the folders.
Wow. And you know, since
How
you
do
said
you
that,
lose?
Thomas, they had what they said they had the big fire where in '73, where they keep the records in St. Louis.
Yeah, but I think a lot of those that burned, or a lot of those records were destroyed, were older records. Even
Right.
though, they weren't yours.
Okay.
But it's always an excuse, I think, when they can't find records. Oh, it was burned up in the fire. It was burned up in the fire.
Yeah, that's what they were telling me too.
Yeah, well, I've had people say, well, maybe your records were burned in the fire.
Right.
I said the fire was before I even thought of going in the Army. I was 10 years old when that fire happened.
Wow. Yeah, that's.
So, well, the VA's got my folders. I've seen what they digitally have in my file.
Okay.
And then all my paperwork and my medical and dental are gone. And
Wow.
it's like the guy argued the VA. I told him that's a total intentional neglect.
And you were right too.
I asked, I go, how the flip do you lose 100 plus sheets of paper on my medical and the 30 or 40 saw on my dental? The dental's going to be a lot smaller than absent.
Right.
Everything you denied me on was in my records for the most part.
Right.
And they won't take my word for it. They call me a liar, basically.
They won't take your word for it. No, they won't.
Well, they do that to a lot of guys. Oh, we can't get your records. Screw you. That's what they do.
Right. And then tell me, what'd you say?
They tell people get a buddy statement. You know what? I think I know all about 3 or 4 guys I spent in my time was in the service. And, but I don't like, let's say, up in the DMZ.
Right.
Only one guy, and he remembers less than I do, only one guy I know was up there when I was in 87. Past that, I don't know anybody else.
Right, and that's what I've just been said to Thomas, because when I was there, I know none of my buddies that was was in the unit with me in the 1st and 38.
Yeah, well, you did. All right, did you plan to keep contact with them 40 years later?
No. 'Cause once I left, I probably wrote back about 1 or 2 times, but that was it.
Yeah, well, same here. It's been 35 years since I went in. Over 35, and I didn't plan. Okay, a guy knew, let's say, in Fort Knox in 1984.
Right.
I didn't plan to stay in contact with him 33 years
Right.
later. I mean, I always go. One guy I knew from Fort Knox.
Right.
Or not, that wasn't 84, it was 83. So whatever.
And at our age, Thomas, my buddies that we did know them, a lot of them had passed away. Because it's been a while now since we was in there.
Oh yeah. That's the other thing, buddies.
So how can you prove it?
Buddies,
Right.
the older guys I do who are, let's say, senior NCOs or even senior NCOs or older officers, many of them were Vietnam vets.
Right.
Guys, this is let's say 84,
Right.
for example. 84 seems to stick in mind for some reason today. But that popped up as it's because of Chris's birthday. His birth year was 84. He was supposed to be on there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 84 stuck in my head.
Right.
But, let's say my sergeant major I knew, one of them, Sergeant Major Tumbler, good guy. First ID man in Vietnam. The guy wore first ID on both shoulders.
Right.
But Sergeant Major Tumbler is well in the 70s now.
Yeah. And Thomas, you think about this, they said, well, show them some pictures. But you wasn't allowed to take pictures, up in the Z, but we slipped and did, but that was their rule.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
So how you gonna bring pictures?
They monitor our mail. That's
right.
why a lot of guys like Mark Heathcote, who's got pictures.
Right.
I asked Mark, how did you get so many pictures? He goes, when I took the pictures, he goes, I didn't develop them there. I sent them home to my mom.
Right. That's what I did. I lost mine. It fired at my house. I lost all my pictures and stuff. But that's the way that's the way you had to do it.
Well, you had to be sneaky about it because it was illegal.
Right.
In most places they take pictures.
Right.
And,
but the VA asked you for a picture if you was up in the DMZ. They're asking them soldiers, do you have a picture? And they have a rule about not, doing pictures.
Well, somewhere in my stash of pictures I've got, somewhere mine, somewhere I've gotten on the internet. I got one for somebody else, and it's a picture, and this was common back then, even in the camps. It just in the regular camps, and it signed up on the fence that said, camera's not allowed. Picture's not allowed.
Right, it's not allowed. But I can say, Thomas, I got some from you or somewhere else that have a picture of GP Lucy. I looked at that picture all day. You know what? That's oulette now, what they call it. But but that brought back a lot of memories just looking at that picture.
Yeah, well, and I think that's why, you know, with Freedom Bridge and Bridge of No Return, those are fairly common pictures because they were big landmarks in our days.
Oh, yeah.
And because the Freedom Bridge basically meant you were entering the Z.
Right.
Z.
Right.
And the Bridge of No Return, you want to cross that, you're entering North Korea.
Right. Well, when you was there, the Freedom Bridge, it was just one way when we was there, you know. One side flowed, then the next, you know, on the other end, then that flowed. But it's just, you know, one at a time, one lane.
Yeah. So, and how are we doing on time, Levi, before we lose track?
Oh, we just got about 2 minutes and start wrapping it up and start talking about next week.
Well, yeah, and see, folks, we've gone through another hour just talking. We got back in the crib a little bit, but that's right.
All right.
And I figured it'd be good, Levi, for the listeners to hear that, you know, a little bit of background, especially on our family too.
Right.
You know, since we both had several in the military, and
right.
We've been good to try to recognize others, but
right.
I thought it was time we recognized our own family members.
Right, and like you said, you know, we was all soldiers. You know what I mean? We all, you know, no matter what you were, you know, y'all, everybody did the job.
Oh yeah. Well,
so everybody played a part.
For everybody to know, I got to reconfirm it. But next week, you're gonna have this guy. He was in the cab, but he wasn't a cab scout.
Okay, he was a guy. Okay.
But Kane Grafton's going to be on next week with us. Kane, actually, I met Kane in 1988 in Korea. I was with the Air Camp still, and late 87 or late 88 he got there. But Kane was signed to my unit, but he was flight ops.
All right.
And Kane spent a year there. And we've been friends, you know, off and on for 30 years, you know, and so, and Kane, I'll tell you, always bummed Copenhagen from him.
Uh-huh.
He likes to remind me of that. 30 years later, he likes to tell me that story. But Kane also did time in El Salvador, down in Mid-America back in the 80s.
Right.
What do you call it? Central America. And so, what would be intriguing is get Kane on that, and he could talk trash about me. Kane lives in Texas. He's from Texas and lives in Texas. He's an old Texas boy, so he lives near the Houston area. But Kane's good people. He's a good man, and it'll be fun to get him on. Kane likes to talk worse than we do. So.
Okay. I'm looking forward for him.
He is. He's like I said. Kane's a character. I got a picture of him too. I got one I used. I tease the guy. I got one from. It's how do you want to say, a drawing of a soldier from the 9th Buffaloes.
Uh-huh.
And I came across it one day. I said to the kid, I said, God, that looks like you. He goes, holy crap.
Right.
Yeah, it's a drawing that was based off 1880s. It's like, Kane, it looks like you. And there's a cow for attention. But it did. It was his sack face. I mean, the face was his face. He was younger and skinnier than that.
Right. Wow.
But But Kane will be on next week, so he's a good man. But, I'd like to thank everybody for listening. I'm sorry our guests didn't make it, but please always enjoy the show. We're always here to talk military. We probably would have been a little more organized if we knew Chris was going to, miss out on us. So, but I'd like to say good night to everybody, and thank you for listening.
All right, and same for me. All right, good night.